All right. Well, welcome to week one of our family ministry playbook. I'm going to open us up in prayer, and then we'll go ahead and dive into our new book and talk about chapters 1 through 3. Let's pray. Father God, Lord, I'm thankful for the opportunity to meet with these leaders. Lord, I thank you for this book and so far just what you revealed to me. Lord, just putting my priorities straight. Lord, having you first and my family first, and Lord, health and just other things, Lord, and really focusing in on our families. God, I pray that through this book, you really challenge us and stretch us. And Lord, help us see the needs our families have. And Lord, open our eyes to see how we can serve them best. Lord, especially through this really busy holiday season. Um, Lord, we love you. We thank you for the ways we can meet like this. And in your name we pray. Amen. All right. So, like before, what we'll do is just kind of go briefly over each chapter. Since we have three that we're going over now, we'll kind of go a little bit quicker over the review of each chapter. Chapter 1 did not have any questions. It was more of an intro. The chapters 2 and 3 did have questions. His questions are definitely more of like deeper thinking, deeper thought review. But as in the past, we'll kind of give our thoughts and feelings about the chapters, and if we have time, we'll go over the questions. Sound good? Alrighty, cool. Well, let's start with chapter 1, the need for partnering. Hint, it's not about your ministry. What were your thoughts and feelings about chapter 1? Was there anything you highlighted or stuck out to you? Share your thoughts.
I'm just going to do a quick confession. I apparently have been a hot mess lately with the miss and the ad, and I thought the author was today. So I did buy the book, but I definitely did not read it. I thought we were on the other one. So I apologize, but I'll jump in where I can, but I'm definitely not prepared.
That's okay. That's normally how it would go, so don't feel bad. We kind of did things out of the ordinary or out of the regular. I don't know. So don't worry about it. Um, but yeah, just contribute how you'd like. Um, chapter 1 just talked about the need for partnering with parents. Um, it was a really good transition from the book we just read to this. So I think I definitely see a really good connection between the two books. One of the things I highlighted, guys, was on page 14. The kind of like second-ish, third-ish paragraph down. Um, he put, helping kids and students know Jesus more deeply happens best when parents are empowered to be the primary ones equipping their kids for their faith journeys. I highlighted that, and then especially on the next page, page 15, um, that second paragraph, I highlighted the more parents can understand about what's ahead, the greater the likelihood they'll make a priority of investing in their child's spiritual journey now. But our role is not simply to scare the life out of parents by exposing them to the potential struggles their kids will face now and in the future. Rather, it's to educate them regarding those issues. Doing so is often the catalyst for parents making changes in the way they raise their kids in the faith. And I thought that was really good because I think a lot of times we know, like, oh, there's all these great things, or oh, you got to watch out for all these dangers. Oh, there's all these things you need to be prepared for. And we don't want to do the scare tactic to parents. I think that's a huge turnoff. Same thing in churches. Like people don't go to church to be scared into faith or to be scared into to things that pushes people away from their faith. But I think if we take the time to educate them regarding the issues that kids are facing and how to give them tools for their belt and how to relationally connect with them, I think that's a game changer and it's a makes a big difference.
And I think we discussed this before, that in the book that we just finished, is that, if parents kind of have a mentality of letting the church be the spiritual directors of their kids, and it's the drop off thing. And especially with early teens or late adolescents, they want to give them their independence. And so they're just going to drop them off and let the church deal with those issues. And if we don't involve them, even if it's indirectly without the kids present, I think we do them a big disservice. Especially for teens, they don't want anything to do with parents being there at their meetings with them or at their activities with them. And so we've got to be very creative in how we do incorporate parents into the overall structure of whatever we're doing for our kids. Including them, getting them involved, helping to train them that it's their responsibility is a lot of added work for a youth worker, because we're so used to focusing on kids that we do tend to, not involve the parents in a lot of the decisions and stuff. And I appreciated his candor, as to how that affected him and his family, and, what decisions he made to try to move forward to realize that parents are very much a team player and that we have to get them included.
I think for me, and as I read this, I was thinking about the filling of the volunteers. We just try to meet our needs now and not what it looks like, what is actually important. We're just like, oh, I need an extra set of hands. I just need an extra set of hands. And so we kind of miss that opportunity. But as I was listening to what I can't remember if he said it in this chapter or the next one of the three, he has said this. But the idea that we don't have great parenting resources to give. And that might have been the next one. Like, I know as a parent, and I run through a lot of things through my lens. I have that family where it's like the one where the one kid is one way and they're up and down and all over, and none of your children are sitting for Bible study. It doesn't matter what you do, they are not going to listen. One doesn't want to be in Sunday school, one's mad about this. And so I run a lot of things through that lens, but I find that like in our church anyway, I find our parents are actually wanting, they want to know. Like when we do resource giveaways, I have 16 to 17 families signing up, being like, yes, I want this. Yes, I want this. Because I think there's a hunger for like the how, not the how to's, like how do I lead my child to Christ, but being able to equip parents in their own walk with Christ so that they can handle whatever their children comes from their children. Like, so understanding apologetics, because a lot of us don't have deep backgrounds. Maybe there's things we've never thought about that our kids are now facing and dealing with, and we don't necessarily have even the resources. You're like, well, go to your Bible, but that only gets you so far in terms of understanding where your kid is at. And so I think like I'm loving that there seems to be a bit of a shift in the parenting world where we are getting resources that are more about the how-tos and kind of backing it up and being like, this is what you need to, as a foundation, as a parent, have so that you can talk to your kids. But I think when it comes to that, and leading our children or helping our parents realize is we also, so we don't have that. We do a lot of the how-tos. We send home those sheets. I don't know. I'm a family that has never done those sheets. I don't even think they've made it into my house other than in the recycle collection bin at like, a year in. So we've never done those. But I think as well, oh, what was I going to say? Our parents are, so looking for that. They want the resources, the how-tos, the questions. I want to be able to talk to my kids about this stuff. Oh, it's lost me. There was another point about what we're doing. That might be coming up later. Maybe I'll remember it when we get to that part in the conversation.
Well, I liked how he also said, how he focuses so heavily on the kids, and I 100% am like that too. Again, slowly been making that transition to more family focused. But we're all like Kidmans, kids, 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 get those supplies ready for Sunday for the kids, get the lessons ready for the teachers for the kids, get, your environment ready for the kids, choose the music for the kids. And, we got that drop off, got the, kids from the parents and kind of like how Becky was just saying, just changing that mentality to, well, we're not just here for the kids. We really need to change our mindsets here that we're here for the whole family. And that is, a very big responsibility, but um, we've got to not only pour into these kids, we've got to be pouring into these parents and encouraging this partnership and discipleship. Um, And I think encouragement goes a long way to help these parents feel that confidence they need to be the spiritual leaders in their home.
Do you guys have family pastors at your churches? Like I feel like I always feel the tension between um, wanting to serve the kids, but also resourcing the parents, and it feeling like just too big of a job at times, like you could have a full-time person just serving the families and the parents, with apologetics or what have you. Um, do you guys in your churches, do you guys partner with anybody as you're helping parents as well, or is it just as you guys have time? Just out of curiosity.
I do not, it's just me. Like I'm Kidman, then there's our youth leader, and we just kind of work together in the transition of our kids and going from one to another, but we have nobody in between or a next gen pastor or anything like that.
I have the title child and family. I definitely lean more towards family just because that's kind of what my vibe is, I guess. I lean towards like I like everything. If I have an opportunity to demonstrate how do we have a conversation with our kids, like that kind of is just runs through who I am. So I do more of it, but it kind of ends like I only work 26 hours a week. I don't do a full all the way to grade 12 because I just don't have capacity, but we through the way that we resource our parents, like we'll do seminars. I may be responsible for it, but I don't teach it all. So I have a leadership team that has some very vibrant people who are very passionate about specific things. So some of them will teach. We'll bring in different people in our congregation to cover topics that we have to. So I don't have to come up with it. I just have to say, hey, on March 13th, we're doing this. And kind of a way, yeah, because I think sometimes we make it fall all on us, and then we have people in our churches that are way more equipped. That's their passion. Like we have someone who's a curriculum, but she recently did The Girls Are Not Okay, and it's something that she teaches to the school boards. She's doing in her school. She's a teacher, but I let them be like, you know what, you can come in, you can do this. Yeah, I find that's what I do. So it does feel overwhelming. It is kind of how I fit it in, but because it's one of my passions, it tends to take a little bit more of a stronger focus than say some of the other stuff.
We do not have like a separate pastor for that. My youth, the youth pastor and I work closely together to try to reach our families because we just have a lot of overlap from teens. Parents of teens also have parents of elementary and so forth. But yeah, I feel like when I'm reading this, I'm like, it's like also like how do you fit it all in between like because I'm so focused on like what am I teaching the kids, how all that stuff, and then to add the parents on top of it. Like we have done like a parents discipleship night recently, two of them actually like with the youth pastor as well. But it's just that's almost like that was a whole like event kind of thing. It's like adding more to people's schedules, not doesn't always go well. So I don't know. Hopefully, hoping to learn some good stuff from this book.
We don't, one low key, just like low key thing that we did was we took a book cart, like a library shelving cart, and painted it and put it out and called it our lending library. Because there's a lot of families as their kids get older, their Bibles, they no longer need little toddler Bibles. Apologetics for was it the Mama Bear one? Any books, faith-based resources. We have a bunch of missionary biographies out there that the kids can pick from one side, VeggieTale book DVDs, and then the other side is more parental Johnny Erickson Tata, different things out there that people from the church can either donate to or parents can take from. And we have noticed that on Sundays, like parents comb around that quite a bit just to see almost like a free library, but all faith-based. Um, and that's been something within my capacity as far as like just hosting that.
I like that. That's a great idea. Do you let if they take a book from there, do they just keep it, or do you expect them to like bring it back when they're done and for
We
somebody
tell them
else.
bring it back, but there's no checkout. And if it once it walks away, if it's gone, it's gone. You know, we do put a sticker in the front cover that just says, you know, part of the CUD Kids lending library.
Hmm.
But if they keep it, then I feel like they need it and it was meant
Yeah.
to be, and I'm happy to bless them.
Yeah, that's good. I
Yeah.
like that. Mm.
I mean, I don't have the answer and I wrote it down as a question, but from what I've read so far, I feel like what he's saying is we're not adding more overall to our schedules, but we're concentrating more specifically on parents. And then the hope is that it will then ripple or tri the ripple effect will then be our kids spiritually growing. But obviously, then we have, you know, the admin skills or the admin jobs and tasks and all the other normal things. But I think I would then ask for clarity. Okay, well, then if our focus is then on parents, you know, we still have all the other things we normally do. So then where is that balance of focusing relationally on parents plus the normal things we do, you know, on a weekly basis for Sunday preparation? If you don't have the resources of assistance and blah, 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 blah. I think that's a really good question.
I think, like, I don't know, I think about like, because, you know, we have Sunday mornings. I still do a lot of the admin stuff around here. I have my Sunday school teachers plan their own lessons, but that's about it because of different levels we have. But I've found the delegating. Like on Sunday morning, I don't teach unless I absolutely have to because someone doesn't show up. So it allows me to sit there and greet all my family and connect with the different parents, make that list of like, I haven't seen this child, you know, or this parent, or I haven't talked to them. And I think sometimes we get really caught up and it has to be this intensive. Like I've read some books and we've read a couple that they're like, oh, you need to run your classes and you need to do this and you need to do this and you need to. And it's like, whoa. Um, Even in just the little things like, so this month we're giving away lunchbox cards to our families, to anyone who has any connection to a child who wants to encourage them. There's a bunch of free ones. Jetty Allen has some from her book, You Are Not Alone. I found these ones. I can't remember where. They were a free resource. They're super cute. We just put them on. And sometimes just being able to say, hey, this resource is for you to take. It's free for us. They could print it off themselves, but if you do the work, it's easy for us to print off copies. And it's been amazing to see how many families have grabbed them, you know, as I'm going to slip them into my grandkids' notebook, you know, and providing just opportunities. So we don't have to go big and expensive, but saying, here's a resource, here's how it's used, or however you want to use it, can also help make that a little less stressful. Because, yeah, sometimes I'll sit and be like, I'm so overwhelmed. But when I start being like, wait a minute, it doesn't have to be complicated. Our families don't need complicated. If it takes you 20 hours to do it, your families are going to be like, no, thanks. So just kind of a aside on kind of family in that way. And I mean, we are by no means amazing, but I've just found that the least amount of effort stuff tends to be what my families respond to the most.
I think a lot of it is connection. You know, when the families come and drop their kids off, you know, we purpose to make sure that we talk to those parents and let them know that we are partnering with your kids and we want to partner with you. And so if there's anything that I need to know about, you know, Johnny today, you know, can you share with me? Whether he had a hard night or didn't eat breakfast or dinner or, you know, whatever the event is that starting with the communication with the parents to know that we see them, we recognize them, and we want to be there for them. I think that if you have a family pastor or a ministry for parents, I don't think that I'm hearing from this book that that's what he's focusing on. More so, he's focusing on connecting with parents to let them know that we're there with them and that this is a team effort. And, you know, we can make suggestions or like have lending libraries or books or materials or stuff. But I think I was just reading this book, Forming Faith, and it talks more statistics about how many parents, even if you give them resources, will actually read them. And only 12% of parents will actually get into the resources that we send home with the kids, whether for them or for their children. You know, 55% will take them and look at them sometimes, but you know, that verbal connection and just talking with the parent or having somebody there at the door when they're bringing them in just to communicate that level of association with them, I think helps parents realize that we are considering them. You know, we have a drop off society. Parents just want to drive up, drop their kids off, and drive away. And with the busy schedules that parents have, a lot of them are thinking, man, I just need an hour to just sit and relax or sit and take in or attend the service. I need that time to be able to just unwind a little bit. A midweek ministry in the evening, so many parents will say, man, this is the only time we have to eat, go shopping, have a date night, do something. So they're disconnecting for that period of time because they need something for themselves. And, we have to understand that busyness, especially with young families, young kids, moms are overwhelmed to the max. And so somehow we have to communicate with them that we are there with them to help them in whatever, we can make ourselves available to them so they know that we are a resource. And that we do want to include them in the outcomes and what's going on with their kids. But I think trying to give them more stuff to read or look at just adds a lot to their schedule that they may not be prepared for.
I don't know if this was yesterday's reading or today's because I kind of get it all like combobbled in my head. With that too, Becky is talking about how parents like use with that drop off mentality. Parents just thinking, I can't do it, so let me take my kid to a specialist or to a professional or to someone knowledgeable in that because I can't do it. So I'll take them for that hour to, midweek service or on Sunday morning where they'll get that knowledgeable person teaching them that because I can't do it, you know. And again, that's where, we as leaders need to partner with our parents and encourage them, no, the Lord has called you and he has um, you know, qualified you to do this. And you don't have to be a professional, you don't have to be a master's degree, you know. Um, it can be the littlest things that you can model discipleship for your kid.
It's like getting their phone numbers and just texting them and saying, how can I pray for you today? That includes them in, what you're doing. And they see you as connecting not only with them, but with their kids. And maybe that's a beginning step to just say, I hear you, I see you, you're important. Let me pray for you. And most this generation specifically, texting seems to be a good way to get in that door. They may not read an email, they may not respond to a phone message, but a text is quick. They don't have to respond right away, but maybe they'll say, yeah, for me this week because I'm going through all this. And it also enables you to get a little more personal with each set of parents. I love the idea of having parent meetings and starting the year off, with sharing your vision and your goals and what you hope to do with the kids. But, that's so general and overseeing that you can't really get down to relationships with the parents on a one-on-one, especially in bigger churches. You got a throng of people coming in, you deliver your message and the throng leaves, before you can really get any one-on-one time. So I love the drop-off pickup time to just make sure I have key people focused there to talk to those parents, even if it's as simple as saying, hey, thank you for bringing your kids tonight. This is what we talked about. Or maybe there's an opportunity to say, how can I be praying for you this week? Start small, and then maybe that'll open the door for them to say, hey, do you have time to meet next week? Or can we talk about this or something? Because obviously working in kids ministries administratively, our lives are busy, and to try to set aside another 2 hours a week just to focus on parents, boy, that takes some strategic planning for sure.
But with that, let's move on to chapter 2. It starts with you, how your example can make or break your ability to partner with parents. And I'm going to start off with, I really appreciated how the author started off with how our health, spiritually, mentally, physically, has a huge effect on our overall ministry. Because I feel like so many books that we've read, that's kind of been like a ladder thought. Like it just talks about, all these things that we need to do, which are great. Like there are a lot of good things we need to do. But I really like how he started off with just, sharing this really sad personal story and how it was a wake up call for him. His wife had a miscarriage, and it was just this wake up call that he needed, unfortunately. to see that he needed to get his family together. And I highlighted on page 21 underneath the answer, the way you invest in your own family will significantly affect the fruit of your ministry. To be more specific, you can't expect to see fruit in your ministry if there's no fruit at home. And I just thought that was really good. And he also talks about later, like, you're not expected to be perfect. We can't be perfect. We're not Jesus. But the way you invest in your own family will significantly affect the fruit of your ministry. And I just think that's so good because I know I'm guilty of this sometimes. I spend a lot of time at church, or I'll do a lot of time stuff here at home. And my kids will make comments. I'm like, oh, mommy just needs 5 more minutes. Mommy needs 5 more minutes. And I really need to work on setting those boundaries because I'm not setting a good example for my kids. Like, church cannot be life. Like, God is my life, and then family is my life, and then my job needs to come afterwards. And reading this chapter was a really good refresher for me that I need to really work on those boundaries. So this was, I think, really crucial that this was chapter number 2.
Has anybody read the book he commented about, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry? That's a good book.
No, but it's on my list though now.
Yeah. It's good.
It's one of those books I feel like you can read a couple times, like
Mhm.
every chapter, like, ooh, ooh,
Mhm.
in a good way.
Yes, I agree. Yes.
It was actually going to be on the list of books for us to read, but I wasn't sure if it was good for Kidmin leaders, like for us to read as a group or not, and if it was more of a personal book. But yeah,
I think
now
it
it
would
is
be a
on my
good
list to read
one.
for sure.
Yeah,
You think
definitely.
so?
I think so. What do you think, Jessica?
I remember it convicted me a lot on a personal level, which anything that convicts you on a personal level, I feel like they're saying here, it has a ripple effect into how you do
Right.
work and stuff. It's probably been over a year since I last read it though to remember exactly like, but I do remember like it had a lot of good food for thought that
Mm.
was very convicting as I went through it because in our role, it's very busy all the time. I feel like it's very easy to do
Mhm.
that. So it was a good reminder to not overextend.
Yeah, I like it.
Well, I think that any book that can affect us on a personal level, I mean, as they clearly are pointing out throughout all of the different books we've read, our personal lives impact our ministry lives.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think the personal books, although maybe they're not specific to leadership, doing them in groups like this, they challenge you a little bit differently to actually like, and there's a little bit of that accountability. So if on Monday, or, one week we're like, everybody's going to go through their schedules, and the next week we have to be like, did you do it? And there's just that sense. I mean, we're quite a community, right? Like we have a lot of people who've been with us pretty much the whole time, off and on. So I don't know. I'd be game for a personal book. Um, but yeah, I was definitely convicted about the worship part. It's been something that's like kind of been percolating in my life. Like, I realized so I wasn't here last 2 weeks ago because we were at a worship, leadership, what is it? Denomination retreat. So our province got together with another provinces, like the two denominations did a retreat. And I realized that that was like one of the first times I've sat in worship, like in a worship set in a very long time. Because usually that's when I'm greeting my families. And I don't see it as like, not ministry, but it's like, when was the last time, I allowed myself to participate in such a way that you're not on? And that one was a hard one because we've been trying to figure that out. I've realized for my kids, my younger two, our church is the only church they've ever known. And all they've ever known is mom not in church. And even at one point, I remember them being like 3 or 4 sitting in the pews by themselves because dad was leading worship and mom was doing her thing. And kind of just like we're kind of seeing I feel like some of the fruit of that, not great fruit, um, is kind of playing out because, our kids have never had to sit because I don't sit. And, by the time I get into the worship service, we've lost our spot because we told our kids to sit and they didn't sit and now it's gone, or they gave it to another family who came in and they're like, well, they needed it and we were alone. So that definitely has been something that I've definitely been thinking through, like, people look to us and I hear that. I know that, personal experiences and stuff, but at the same time, it's hard. to be present. And I remember having guilt when I first started many years ago. I was like, I need to be in service. And I'd sit there I'd try to make it in for a full service once a month. And I remember feeling so guilty until I was like, wait a minute, the youth pastor is sitting there and the associate pastor is sitting there. And they're still their job, but they get to sit through the service. So it was just kind of that, like, I don't know, it's still something I wrestle with. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one. So it's harder to just sit when you're like, but I need to be on because families are on at this point. So
We have three services at our church, two contemporary, and then the 8 o'clock is the traditional one. And that's the one that I have to end up going to because, which is unfortunate because it's so early in the morning. But in order for me to be able to sit in service, because like you said, it feels impossible during the other two. And their worship, it's great. I grew up Baptist and we had hymns, and so there's a lot of hymns in that service. But I did realize when I went to the Kids Matter conference, like in the worship in there, like, just tears streaming down your cheeks the whole time, and just the how hungry I felt like that entire room was for corporate worship, because the reality is a lot of us probably aren't in there for worship on a Sunday morning.
When your car is the only time you get like worship, that's not good. You know, we need that corporate worship with fellow believers because there is something about singing with a crowd of people that just, you feel like you're in the present, like this is what heaven would sound like. And, you're worshiping with others, just praising God, and there's just nothing like it. Um, there's reasons why, there's verses like when two or three are gathered in my name are in the Bible. Um, so it is important for us to get that. Um, I'm excited because I finally am during the school year, I get that every other month. I'm able to do that. Um, but we're working on that as well. But even when I'm in there, though, it's so hard because I still have our radio in my ear waiting for the other shoe to drop. And so that's where my biggest struggle is like, yes, I'm in there. But I also still am on with the radio in my ear because I'm still like the leader of the day. Um, so I still try to focus, but I know I'm not 100% uh in that service. So it's a struggle for sure.
that's what I was going to ask you. I was like, even though you're in there, because I find like we have in the summer more often Christmas, Easter, I get like a Sunday off, but I find that even though I'm sitting in that space, I'm not off. I'm watching the new families walk in. I'm watching the little kids that are roaming. Do our parents know this? Do they need help with this? Do they? And then halfway through the sermon, you're like, oh yeah, someone's preaching. And I find it really hard. And so, yeah, I'm curious to know, like, and my other question then is for those of you who do get into the service, how much of that, or how much, I don't want to say support, monitoring, maybe the word, do you get from leadership to be like, no, you have to be. And so they're kind of like encouraging you, they're equipping you, they're helping you prioritize being in there and not just being in there, but also being able to remove yourself from like, because like I said, I don't teach, but I'm still on like Jody all the time. You're in, even though you're sitting there, you're hoping the other shoe does not drop. But how many of you have upper level support that's actually like holding you accountable to be like, were you in service this month? Is that a thing? Or is that even something that people, I know they realize it, like I'll get told, oh, you need to be in service. But is there steps being taken, I guess, to support that?
We have, especially smaller churches where you have one service on a Sunday morning and you're on, you don't have the opportunity to be able to stop and go to that service. I would suggest maybe considering another church in your area that has a worship service like on a Saturday night that you could just go, maybe even with your family, and just sit there with no responsibilities, no expectations, just sit and enjoy that worship service. And then, you don't have to be involved in any way whatsoever, except for just attending the service and letting God speak to you through the message and worship. And then, Sunday you're on again, you're working, you're busy, but that just gives you and your family a time to just have just you as a corporate whole to let God speak to you.
I don't have any like requirements. Mine is more my pastor going, yeah, I saw you in service. I'm so glad you were finally able to get in. Let's try to get you in more. And he'll even sometimes ask, what can we do to get you in more? And I'll be like, well, I need people that are willing to teach the large group part. And that's the hardest position for me to fill. So that's where I'm at. Mine's more of an encouraging aspect versus like questioning or negative or requirements. Mine's more like I want to get you in service more.
I didn't mean it to be negative. I just meant like that accountability. Like, are you actually going? When you were in there, Jody, on Sunday, was that earpiece in your ear? Did you put the earpiece down? And I mean, I know most people won't, but I don't know. I just say that's something that's always percolated because like we used to have two churches in our city that used to do evening. We don't have, as far as I know, there is none that currently do a Saturday night service where we are. We get as a staff, we get 3 Sundays off a year, on top of any holidays, but we're finding like as a family, it's hard because that's when you go to visit other family. And maybe you go to church, maybe you don't, like depending on who we go to see or where we are, or you go away one of those weekends. And so I just was, yeah, curious in terms of just that encouragement that feeding into your spiritual lives. I guess on the topic of our spiritual lives, do you, any of your upper levels ask about your personal spiritual life?
We I would say yes, we do discipleship once a week, all of the pastors, and we're actually going through that, the emotionally healthy leader right now. And it's a good time, I feel like, where we can they are, yes, our senior pastor asks us a lot of questions in there. And he encourages me to go to service, but the thing that he nags me the most about is, what day did you take off this week? Like, that's the biggest thing, because he always says, I'm probably the only person in your life who's asking, are you taking time off versus what are you doing? So he doesn't nag about like the getting into service as much, because he knows like volunteers call in 15 minutes before, and like life happens. But his biggest concern for me typically is, did you take Friday off, a whole day off, where my kids are still at school? It wasn't like I just had a day to myself. He comes down on me, I feel like, pretty hard when I don't.
That's almost more important. I mean, not to put down service, but that personal breakaway, that's awesome.
We just make sure that we're being coached by someone or we are coaching with someone. Um, our pastor and executive pastor kind of are our coaches, which we kind of meet once a week on things. Um, but they don't dive into, are you reading your Bible every day? Are you, doing all these things like a checklist? Um, we on Fridays when we do our staff meetings, like we have a time of prayer and praise and worship and scripture reading. But there's no like mandatory checklist or check-in list of things that you should like or that they're asking you to do. Well, with our 9 minutes remaining, let's speed through chapter 3 real quick, which is building a unified team, working past your own hesitations, and understand the parents you are partnering with. And I kind of chuckled and laughed the first like section of reading when he talked about these people care about sports more than they care about Jesus. And I just kind of laughed. I'm like, hey, a guy that understands. Um, but he's like, I could go on and on, but you get the point. And I'm not trying to get you all riled up. And I just kept laughing. I'm like, this guy gets it. Um, but then he just continued to talk about how we need to start understanding our parents, understanding where they're at, where they're coming from, and how we get to know them better and reach them better. And then he broke the different categories down of different types of parents. So, real quick, share your thoughts, feelings, something you highlighted in the last 8 minutes, and go.
Mm.
I found it interesting. They talk about helicopter parenting. I was recently reading, I don't know why it popped up on my Google internet thing. It tells me highlights because that's the only way we get news, not on Facebook anymore here. So I was looking, and apparently there is a new parental movement, which it may actually feed very well into our ministries, and it's called the lighthouse parent. And the idea is that they're moving away from helicopter and the gentle because they're realizing that didn't work. So they're moving to lighthouse. And the idea of a lighthouse parent is that they are to be shining the light on the truth, which I think could, if we prepare our ministries and we can shape them thinking with that in mind of this next generation of parenting that's coming up, it leads very well into that. And so I found it very interesting because I read through them and some of the other ones, and I was like, yes, like I hear those, and some of those parents are scary, scary parents. But the lighthouse parenting was an encouragement. I read it and I thought, "Oh, there is hope for society." So just side note, that's something we can look forward to. And we can add that to that list, the lighthouse parent, but it will probably be a couple years before we actually see them, though parenting shifts. So yeah, for me, that was as I read through and I was going, yeah, and even as a because I have a kid that's got higher needs, as they talked about like how different parents come and they're prepared, and it's like I even think I come to work sometimes on a Sunday morning and I'm like, I am not in a space because my one kid is he's neurospicy and sometimes very, very, very spicy. And it means that by the time we get to church, we've had like 6 fights, 3 meltdowns. The girls are fighting over everything and all this stuff. And you get to church, you're like, I just want to breathe. And so when I think about like that's the lens that I view everything I give to my parents, everything that I require. Like I've had talks with parents who are like, oh, just so you know, I didn't even do devotionals this week. I was like, yeah, me neither. I get life is busy. We talked about Jesus. We didn't sit down and do a devotional, but we talk about Jesus. We bring him into our conversations. I just found a way to incorporate him and kind of using that as a standpoint. But I think, yeah, remembering that space. I love that he was like, not every parent wants to be distant. Not every parent is just to drop it off. They're literally coming in the survival mode. I see a lot of parents that are like, we are just trying to make it to Sunday and be here in one piece. So I thought that was interesting. And um, I highlighted our effectiveness in reaching and equipping the next. I have no idea what page it's on. Sorry, guys. It's above reading the roster. Is limited only if we fail to understand parents and involve them in our thinking, planning, and implementation. By shifting our focus from seeing parents as opponents to becoming teammates, to it alongside of in case we increase our effectiveness in ministry. And I have found that I have a leadership team that is primarily parents made up of different backgrounds and strengths, but they are incredibly effective. And as they found their voice to be able to be like, this is a bad idea, like this is not going to work well, it's been very beneficial. And I highly recommend it, especially if you like, I handpick my team. I pick people who I know are stronger in saying no or standing up for what shouldn't be happening. But if you can pick a team like that, they help and they're a great sounding board and just shaping, like we don't have time for this. Our parents, and they usually hear before we do the issues that people have with our ministry.
I also, the bottom of page 39 is a section I highlighted. The last little paragraph there, it says partnering with parents begins with getting on the same team with them, but it doesn't stop there. As you develop an understanding of their needs and the strengths they bring to the team, you'll build a team that can work together to do some great things. And this is where kind of like the delegating Kristen talked about and finding where like you can utilize parents in different capacities can make your ministry thrive. I mean, you're partnering with them and building relationships, and your ministry is going to grow. Your kids are going to grow spiritually. I mean, your ministry, I mean, there's so much potential there for your ministry, right? And then you're also seeing kids are seeing how they can grow and partner in the church because they're seeing their parents partner with the church. And then I just think I see a big snowball, big positive snowball effect happening with that. So I highlighted that as like a really big positive. Um, and I hope to look at my parents differently and say, okay, how can I, best partner with them? How can we work together, for their family? How can we work best for our ministry? What can we do, um, you know, to make things awesome? Without overwhelming. Awesome without overwhelming.
I liked the reminder that he tells us to pray for insight into the parents' lives and wisdom of how we can best support them. I mean, we should be doing that, but I feel like I needed that was just a good reminder for me to just specifically ask for that.
Yep, because they're not always going to be an open book.
I think one of the insights I took from the Trauma Informed Ministries book was to find your parents, and even the parents of difficult children, and we've all got those, is to find a positive of that child and go to that parent and share that positive. Because anytime those parents are confronted, it's going to be what they did wrong, how upsetting it was, the meltdown. That's what they hear everywhere they go. That's what they're hearing. And if we can find a positive something about their child, it just builds them up, and we don't have to fabricate that. We can genuinely find something, and that opens that door of communication with them to realize that you're not there just to criticize their child for what they're doing wrong, but you also love their kids and wants what's best for them and find good in them. And we have to make it a welcoming environment and one where their kids are loved. And some of those kids aren't easy to love, for sure, but if we could find that positive, and it changes our perspective on the child as well. So, but they need encouragement too.
Well, I think this is a good point to kind of wrap up our discussion for today. We will be meeting next week for chapters 4 through 6. We're doing 3 chapters a week. So next week will be chapters 4 through 6. The 21st is when we'll meet the author, Matt Markins, for our previous book. So, yes. So next week is chapters 4 through 6, and then the following week will be meet the author from our previous book. So make sure you read up. There are questions at the end of each chapter if we get to them, but please make sure you're answering the questions on your own time. We want to make sure we're reflecting on what we're reading, really challenging and stretching ourselves. And yeah. Jessica, would you mind closing us in prayer today?
Father, I thank you for this time, Lord, of just encouragement, and ask that you would guide us this week. I thank you for our parents. I thank you for the kids that you've placed in our ministries. We know that they've been hand chosen for our care areas. Ask that you would give us wisdom in how to support parents, Lord, that you would give us courage to be good delegators to people as we set up ways to help them, Lord. We ask that you would surround each of these kids with a village of people, Father, coaches, parents, grandparents, us, Lord, volunteers who would pour into them and would point them to you, Lord. As you would help us as we journey as leaders, Father, to say yes to ourselves, Father, and know that that is an act of obedience to a lot of times, to take that rest, to just dwell with you, Father, rather than do for you. Be with us. Thank you for the gift of community, and that we don't have to do this alone. We ask this in your precious and holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. All right, guys, hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next Thursday.
Bye.
Bye.